So let's revisit Lee Taft's plyo-step, shall we? Good morning. Happy Tuesday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. All right. It's only Tuesday, but I'm having a pretty good week. Big call on IFSU yesterday. Went long, but it only seemed like a few minutes. Really enjoying how people are catching on to things and doing great work out there. So I appreciate you guys on there. Quick reminder, Coffee and Coaches Conference call Thursday morning, New Year's Eve day. We're going to do it anyway, 6 a.m. Grab some coffee and then join us for that. Those calls are getting really good, so don't miss out. Let's go ahead and dig into today's Q&A, and this comes from Austin. And Austin says, the false step when going from parallel stance to sprint seems to be a point of contention amongst coaches. It's a common strategy used by athletes, and some say it improves performance while others insist it slows the athlete down. How do you view this strategy in regards to your model, and do you coach it or advise against it, and why? Thanks. So Austin, we've talked about this actually a little bit, and I've got a couple of videos up on the YouTubes. One called Cutting from the Inside Out, I believe, and the other one is actually examining this concept that you're asking about. There tends to be two camps. There tends to be the camp that says, yes, it's representative of a normal aspect of performance that actually enhances our ability to move quickly and change direction. And then there's the other camp that just doesn't understand it. And so then they say, well, it's a negative and it creates interference. And I would be in the camp that says that it's a normal aspect of performance, and for various reasons. And we're going to talk about those. Calling it a false step immediately creates this negative connotation. And so again, it's either representative of a human's inability to name things poorly or tendency to name things poorly, or again, they're just trying to convince you that it's a negative. My buddy Lee Taft has done a great job in reframing this exceptionally well by referring to it as a plyo-step and then showing how it's beneficial. And he's done it repeatedly over and over again. And you'll see that athletes will use this naturally. You're never going to coach somebody out of it. It's actually necessary to redirect forces. And so we're talking about internal forces and the external forces to move quickly in the direction that is desired. And so you can do all the drills you want to try to get rid of it. But once the athlete is performing in context, it comes right back because it is essential. It's a combination of Newton's third law, connective tissue behaviors, muscle orientation, skeletal orientation, and then optimizing internal forces. So let's talk about these internal forces a little bit, because I had a question on IFAST University about this too, and we kind of touched on it. But basically, when we're talking about internal forces, we're talking about gut movement and gut orientation and things like that. And so one of the kickers here is that if you can't get your guts moving in the right direction, and if you can't get them moving quickly, you are not going to move in the right direction, and you are not going to move quickly. And so it doesn't matter what we're talking about. If we're talking about a squat, and we're coming up through the sticking point in a squat, you have to be able to elevate your guts against the downward pressures that are associated with the internal pressure and then the external load. And if you can't push the guts up, I got news for you, you're not going to finish your squat. And so we're talking about changes of direction. We're talking about acceleration. We're talking about accelerating from a static position. If you can't redirect your guts, and if you cannot accelerate them, you cannot accelerate yourself. Okay? Now, I have a video that talks specifically about this, and I actually lay it out through the concentric and eccentric orientations, the yielding and overcoming strategies. So literally I take it step by step. So rather than repeating myself, here's what I want to do. I want to go ahead and cut to that video here. But let me preface this by making sure that you have a little bit of an understanding. Watch the videos that are associated with concentric and eccentric orientation, overcoming and yielding actions first. So watch those videos first, because what you need to have an understanding of those concepts. Then you go to this video, and then it sort of all clicks and kind of makes sense. So please watch those videos first. So we're going to cut to a breakdown of Lee Taft's plyo-step from the inside. We're going to talk about the internal mechanics that everybody has questions about. So we'll go to that. After that, you're on your own for the rest of the day. So have a great day. I will see you guys tomorrow. So I have a question from Justin, and Justin asks, I've been thinking about the mechanics of base stealing in baseball and trying to use your Rethinking Agility video as a reference for understanding. But I was wondering if you could clarify the pelvic floor mechanics if you're starting from a lateral stance without a cut or change of direction preceding the acceleration. So this is a really good question because I think there's probably a little bit of a misunderstanding as to how this movement is initiated, especially in regard to base stealing. It's also going to reinforce an element of strategy that my buddy Lee Taft promotes called the plyo-step. So if we think about the element of base stealing from what we would consider a more lateralized stance, if I'm going to be running this way towards second base, I have to initiate a strategy on the left leg to allow me to push to the right. I'm starting with my foot on the ground, so right away I am in a propulsive strategy. But what I'm actually going to do is I have to create an internal force. So I literally have to get my guts to move in this direction first and then push them as quickly as possible to the right. So what I actually do is I unweight this left foot, and what that does is it causes the left anterior outlet to eccentrically orient and create a yielding strategy, which makes my guts fall down and to the left. As I then pick up my propulsive strategy on this side, I again re-elevate the anterior pelvic outlet, which pushes the guts to the right. So I get this swoosh to the left and a swoosh to the right that accelerates me towards second base. This is literally the foundation for Lee Taft's plyo-step. It's the internal mechanics that are created by the external strategy. If I didn't take advantage of these internal mechanics, I would never be able to move quickly. Let me draw this out for you on the whiteboard. So Justin, this is a representation of the internal dynamics at the pelvic outlet. So we're looking down inside of the pelvis, and this is going to represent how we create the gradients and the internal forces that allow us to accelerate toward second base as quickly as possible. So I'm going to be starting from a relative position of symmetry here. So this is sort of a hingy position that you'll typically see in somebody that's taken their lead off of first base. And so because they're hinged, they've got a concentric overcoming strategy bilaterally, anteriorly, and a yielding strategy posteriorly. So this allows them to bend forward at the hip. Now, I have to create my plyo-step just like my buddy Lee Taft would coach. And so the way that I create this is I have to create what looks like an early propulsive strategy on the left side. So this would be, if I was stepping forward in normal gait, this would be even before my foot hit the ground. So literally what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to unweight my left foot. And what that creates is the orientation inside the pelvis where I actually get my guts to start spinning into the left. I have to accelerate my guts in the opposing direction because what I'm going to do, as soon as I reload that foot, I'm going to actually start to spin my guts in the opposite direction. So I drew this really, really small because this moment in time happens so fast because it's going to lead me into my max propulsive phase. So this gets the guts spinning left. I switch my orientation as quickly as possible. That gets the guts spinning to the right, and then I hit my max propulsive phase here. And so what happens here, this is where the gut acceleration just goes crazy. So I kick my guts as hard as I can to the right, and that spin internally is what accelerates me towards second base. Then it's just a matter of flip-flopping strategies again, and I'm off and running. But again, so I go from a position of symmetry, I drop the guts down into the left anteriorly. That spins the guts to the left. I immediately flip-flop my strategies to spin the guts going to the right, and then I accelerate them with max propulsion, and that gets me towards second base. Hopefully that answers your question, Justin.